be here. Appreciate the invite. As we look at this conference, and the theme, of course, is change, things that will help the change along, of course, are tools, right? And the tools that I'm going to talk to you about are drugs and biologics and devices. And the two things that get in the way most of change and innovation in those two areas, of course, is regulation and financing, right? So the FDA and the various ways we raise money. So I've written a book about this. I've written a couple of books. This book is called Innovation Breakdown: How the FDA and Wall Street Cripple Medical Advances. And what enabled me to write this book was this was a single product public company. So what isn't material to an investor in a single product company? Nothing. So that means as the development was happening and as we were moving the product along, the full knowledge was known into the marketplace. You don't get that at the big companies, right? Because they have 82 products on the market, another 60 in development. So nothing that happens in any one of those products is really material. To a little company, where that's where the innovation really happens, it's all material. And whatever wasn't made public in the filings for SEC, we made public what's called a citizen petition, because we filed a citizen petition in the middle of the review of the FDA. So at the end of the process, I realized, wow, all this information is out there. All I need to do is link it together. And for all of you so interested in change and innovation, this will give you a bird's eye view of how it works in a little company. I also wrote a paper earlier this year called The Proper Role of the FDA for the 21st Century, and that's what this is about. It's a follow-up paper to this that's coming out imminently called Fostering Resilience in the Medical Marketplace. This one is the hand-wringing paper. We got a problem. This one is how to solve it. I'm actually going to talk about both right now. Okay. So when my first book came out, there was a review in the Wall Street Journal, and it said, you know, remarkably, after all that he's been through, and you'll read about it, I had lost 29 pounds without trying. I graduated high school at 173. I hit 168. Very trying, very difficult. My marriage, my health. I was only getting 2 hours of sleep a night. Really, really bad. So the reviewer says, Matt, after all he's been through, he still believes in a strong FDA. And then the gentleman said, he's wrong. He's wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. I think you absolutely have to have regulation. Okay? It's just, what are the regulators supposed to do? And that's really my theme. So if you look at what the law says FDA is supposed to do, it's to promote the public health promptly, efficiently, reviewing clinical research and taking appropriate action on the marketing of regulated products in a timely manner. In case you didn't see, there's 3 senses of urgency in the first sentence of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And how are we supposed to do it? Well, this is good. Make sure foods are safe, wholesome, sanitary, properly labeled. By the way, not to make sure foods promote nutrition. It's safe. We don't want toxic foods. Human and veterinary drugs are safe and effective. That's my thing, and that's great. There is reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness in devices. Notice with devices, it's just reasonable assurance. It's not this ridiculously high bar we have for parenteral, drugs that you take inside your body. Cosmetics are safe and properly labeled. I think that's good too. And the public health and safety are protected from electronics, so X-ray machines don't give out too much energy. Okay. You go on the FDA website. This is what they say their mission is. The FDA is responsible for protecting the public health. So when I was in Little League, I was a pretty good player, and my father once said to me, "You're a pretty good player." He says, but great. He says, "You go up to the plate saying, if it's a strike, I'll swing at it." He says, "The great players go up to the plate saying, I'm swinging unless it's a ball." So that's the difference to me between promoting and protecting health. Okay? And Congress told the FDA to promote. Later on, they get around to advancing the health, but then they give themselves a few more responsibilities that the law didn't give them. more effective, safer, more affordable. That's not the FDA's role, okay? So the FDA has a very limited role. It's two things. I have it on a slide coming up. We'll go to that one right now. The two roles of the FDA are decide which products need to be given by prescription through a learned intermediary, okay? And that's good versus over the counter. And to judge whether the drugs are safe and effective. What does safety mean? Safety means, can it be labeled for safe use? What does effectiveness mean? Effectiveness means that it's not snake oil. It means that it has some biological action. And basically, the summary of my talk is that the FDA has gotten away from that, and I'll explain why. And the reason they got away from it is because they're afraid, and we caused the fear. So we'll get into that. Okay, so this is the stock chart of the company I was running when I wrote Innovation Breakdown. It took 28 months to get a device to help detect melanoma approved. 28 months, it took 5 months in Europe. So the regulation said it should have taken 6 months, but it took 28, and in the middle of it, we had a disaster that the company really never recovered from, even though we got the product approved. And it, when I remember getting, Daniel mentioned, you get those emails, you get people talking to you about how great things are. I got letters from dermatologists telling me they would have missed these melanomas without the products. That was one of the most wonderful feelings in my life. So, you know, when I wrote about the FDA website, I keep looking at it, about their mission. It sneaks up on you in little ways. So I was just at an advisory committee meeting. Advisory committee is like a drug. It's like a court hearing. You know, you guys see Defending Your Life. Oh, this is not a trial. It's really a trial. Advisory committees are a trial. The only problem is FDA is both the judge and the prosecutor. So, so there you go. But anyway, so I'm sitting there just watching this. It was for a drug called bezlotoxumab, and I'm sitting here seeing these slides being shown between the different points of the advisory committee. And here, this is an FDA slide. FDA advisory committees, protecting the public health. Okay, so advisory committees are gadfly sessions. You bring these experts in from around the country, and you ask them to beat the living daylights out of the data. Okay? And then at the end of it, it's supposed to say, okay, after all is said and done, you would have preferred they do this, you prefer they do that. Do you want to use this on your patients? But to me, that's pretty subliminal. And it's pretty overt, rather. It's not subliminal. If my job here is to protect, I'm more likely to say no, right? So these things are creeping in. They're creeping in the regulations. They're creeping in the laws, which I'll get into in a little while. And they're just creeping into the everyday, which stacks the decks against innovation. Okay, so again, by the FDA website, if the FDA is responsible for protecting the public health, well, Thomas Aquinas said, if the highest aim of a captain were to preserve a ship, he'd keep it in port forever. Okay, that's not the highest aim. The highest aim is to promote. And Americans understand that with promote certainly comes some risk if we want to take advances, but that's where the medical marketplace comes in, which I'm going to get into. Okay, so, you know, many ways to cut this. Regulations are increasing dramatically, and that hurts innovation, of course. Okay, so why does the agency do this? By the way, I have great respect for a number of the agency people that I've gotten close with. I've gotten 3 products approved, a drug, a biologic, and a device. So why are they doing this? They're doing that of fear, okay? So what they should be doing is safety and effectiveness means safe here, safe when labeled, and has activity. They've moved to defining safety as safety determined by a benefit-risk evaluation. So now we have efficacy brought into safety, which is absurd. And effectiveness isn't just the blood pressure goes up, or I'm sorry, goes down, the glucose goes down, the tumor shrinks. Oh, no, no, no. How long does the patient live? Now, the problem with that is, yeah, we all want that, but the problem is those are those take a long time, those kind of studies, all right? And you could never control for all of the factors that modulate those type of clinical utility responses, okay? And that's why it's not in the law. So out of fear, the FDA is doing this, and we got to get them back to doing that, okay? And I see no better illustration of this than a statement from an FDA commissioner about right to try legislation. Okay, right to try is when a patient is dying, can they get access to experimental drugs? And even virtually on patients' deathbeds, when nothing else is available, the FDA is still talking about our job is to protect patients from potentially harmful drugs. When you have muscular dystrophy and your kid, your son's in a wheelchair and he's going to die in 8 years because there's nothing else, wouldn't you want something? If you're going to die in a few months, wouldn't you want? Where's the protection there? Why do we need to protect? So it's really fouled up. So here's the point of my talk. The point of my talk is FDA is critical, needed, and I absolutely love the FDA to do safety and effectiveness. And they belong at the top of the funnel, to enter safe and effective products at the top. Then you have this whole, what you experienced over the last few days here, the whole medical ecosystem of early adopter physicians, physicians and their patients, advocacy groups, cooperative groups, the companies doing even more studies, payers are becoming an incredibly important piece of the medical marketplace, pharmacists, now the Internet of Things, who are all this, and what you start is you have thousands upon thousands of drugs that are safe and effective, and over time, only a few hundred are really used a lot. And that's the medical marketplace at work, figuring out which are clinically useful, how to use them the best, how to manage side effects, and the whole bit. And the problem is, because we've driven the FDA into this fear mentality, the FDA wants to be down here. They want to be on the point of approval, on the time of approval. They want all this worked out. And what does that do? It increases the time of the trials, and you have drugs just turned away because people won't even begin to develop them. I'm what's called an originalist, okay, when it comes to FDA law, and I think it would best serve innovation to get back to that. So FDA, something happens in the external environment, the FDA gets beaten up by what we call fire alarm oversight. What do you do when you get beat up? You don't do that anymore. So they recoil, they're human, they recoil, and they make the requirements higher. Then the police patrol oversight, Congress is supposed to say, wait a minute, are you following the mission we gave you? That doesn't happen because doesn't get votes, okay? Police patrol oversight doesn't get votes, fire alarm oversight does. And then these recoiling changes creep into the law. So it's a vicious cycle. And what that happens for innovation, and what we're talking about at this meeting, is the law has a healthy balance of pre-approval requirements and post-approval vigilance. With all of this FDA recoiling, we get to a point where the pre-approval requirements grow enormously and out of balance with the post-approval requirements. All right, so I'm going to finish here. How do we get it back? I think the best way to get it back is to redefine for the FDA what effectiveness means. They want effectiveness to mean this. I don't mind that as one category, clinical outcomes and survival. But I think effectiveness, showing a drug has an effect on biomarkers, clinical signs and symptoms, disease modification, which you can read about, and that. So that to me is the answer, and I think if we were to get back to safety and effectiveness, we'd get more drugs on the market. That would help pricing, that would help patients who are suffering, and it would encourage more innovation and actually assist, of course, in the financing of innovation.
Thank you. Yes, questions? Yeah.
I agree 100% with you. I am very frightened of the kinds of things that are in dietary supplements. My wife takes a vitamin. We're both in the industry. She opened up the vitamin pack yesterday, and it was cloudy. The capsules were cloudy. I said, we work in the industry. I said, you got to send that to the FDA. And so supplements have very little controls. They aren't tested as well. They have actually active pharmaceutical products in them. I believe that supplements are an area that need to be looked at more, and right now, in some cases, we have a wild, wild west going on. But great question. I agree. You absolutely, I think it's a great point. I think that the court cases in many instances are ridiculous, and that would another great point to foster innovation would be tort reform, there's no doubt. Great point. Sure. Oh, I got a lot of comments on Sarepta. First of all, if you look at the questions, it's my next paper actually, I'm looking at advisory committee meetings. If you look at the questions the panel was asked about Sarepta, they were not traditional questions. Okay, they were horrible questions. And I never saw in a question, do you believe there is substantial evidence, parentheses, let us teach you what substantial evidence is. They left out of the important point of that substantial evidence. Historical controls do count as substantial evidence, but they left that out. So I think the Sarepta situation is terrible. I have an editorial in Forbes on the fact that we need a conditional approval system. The Sarepta drug would be the ideal. Europe's got 2 versions of conditional approval. Why don't we have that? So what are your views? You got mine. What are yours? Yeah.
And we need conditional approval.
Yes.
We think they're safe. Get the stuff to market.
Right.
Post-marketing.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in lockstep. We can have a cup of coffee together. Maybe not my friend over there.
Oh, no.
We can still, decaf. Yes, actually, the quote I give you is when they came in with the Kiefer amendments on learned and intermediary. So I'm not as old as I look. I'm not as old as I look.
We have one,
Go ahead.
time for one more question.
Now he doesn't know how to...
Can I be honest with you? I don't want them to have a strategy. I don't want them involved in it, okay? I want them to do, is it safe? Is it effective? And get out of the way. And then let the doctors and the patients and all this in the medical marketplace figure that out. I don't want big biomarker trials before approval. Oh, for them to validate the biomarker and then you got to then prove it proves the clinical utility. It would be a nightmare. So I would love it for collecting data. I don't believe that, oh, if the data are only collected this way, they're valuable. No, I'll take data off Twitter. I'll take data off, anywhere, we can get data, and I think FDA should have access to it. So I'm actually defending them there, but I don't want them involved in that.
And what happens today? This is if you wish, but
What happens today is right now they're not as advanced, so they're not doing anything with it, but they're talking about it. And, I just see, I don't see any good that could come out of that, in my honest opinion.